Hello and welcome to the Grove Church Podcast. I'm Charlie Lofton, the lead pastor there, and we are so glad that you are joining us. Whether you are a member and you're just catching up on a sermon that you missed, or you're someone who's brand new, we are really glad that you are joining us. And if you are new in some way, and I know that a lot of people will do that, will listen to sermons first before they visit, I want you to know that we would love to meet you at any point. You can join us live in our services on Sunday, 9 and 10:30, or our streaming service at 10:30. Either way, we would love to be able to get to know you. And regardless of why you are here listening to this sermon today, thank you so much for joining us. Hey, good morning. Hey, if you are new, I'm Charlie. I'm the lead pastor here. Really glad that you are worshiping with us today. And if you are brand new, everything in the back, a little table there. I have a gift. We would love to meet you. I'd love to meet you after the service. Just get to know you any way that we can help you. Give you a little gift. So very thankful that you are here. And if you are new-ish, I want you to know that after the service, we've got a lunch that we call Connections, where we just kind of talk about who we are as a church. I mean, it's kind of your next step in the journey of helping you get better connected here. So even if you did not sign up for that, we'd love to have you. You can just kind of get probably the best place to do is talk to me there in the back, and we'll make sure that we get you there. Anyway, it's really important to us that sometimes people come and they sort of checking things out, or they just trying to hide out and just trying to get the feel of it. I totally understand that. But when you're ready to get connected, we really want to be able to do that. So we want to make it as simple and as easy as possible. So again, glad that all of you are here. And we are now 3 weeks into a series. We're talking about unity. You kind of spending the first couple of weeks talking about just kind of what it is, why it's so important to the heart of Jesus that his people be united. I mean, he said specifically himself that like this is how the world's going to know that you're mine, by the way you love each other. And it's just so important. And we spent the last 2 weeks defining it, talking about its importance. And now we're kind of transitioning to kind of why do we struggle with this? And I was thinking this week about this thing that my brother and I used to do. We were big music people, and we used to listen to a lot of music, and this was in the 80s. And so normally I try to stick within the last 15 years for my illustrations. And so I apologize since almost all of you are younger than me. So this is going to be irrelevant, but it's important to me. Anyways, we listened to a lot of music in the 80s, and it would really frustrate us when like the lead singer would break away from the band and start his own thing. It's like, why would you do that? I mean, like, obviously, a lot of it sounds the same, and it's like, why? Like, I just don't want to do music with these guys anymore. Like, one of the worst, Steve Perry, lead singer of Journey. All right, okay, so this is the most relevant 80s one I can come up with, because at least you've watched Glee, and you know Don't Stop Believing, right? You know that. And they were making great music together. And While Oh Sherry by Steve Perry, I see, again, I'm old and irrelevant, is a really great song. It's like, why would you do this? Another one, there was a duet called Hall and Oates, and then they had a band behind them. Daryl Hall at one point is like, I'm going to make a solo record. So that's like specifically, I want to keep making music, but not with you. And it wasn't good. And so it's fine. And I'm not talking about like when somebody like Justin Timberlake gets out of NSYNC, or Beyonce gets out of Destiny's Child. Those boy band, girl bands, those are predatory on those kids. And those that can escape and make their own money, good on them. But what I'm talking about, like the Beatles, Eagles, making great art, great music, doing these incredible things together. And then at some point, right, you'd be watching, again, this is me, watching MTV, in between the videos, little news breaks, creative differences. Where suddenly now we can't do this anymore. It's great. Everything we do is great. It's having impact, but I would rather it be less than have to do it with you. And who knows really what's going on there? I guess fast forward to the 90s, you can watch Behind the Music with VH1 and find out what was happening there that caused these relationships to break down, that even though they had the same purpose, they were doing great at it and creating beautiful things. We just could no longer do it together. And there's a mission, a vision that God has called us to, specifically as our church and specifically as churches in Northwest Arkansas and ultimately churches everywhere. And there's an awesomeness to it when God's people work together to be on mission, to help people know who Jesus Christ is, to come to faith, to grow in that faith. And it is beautiful, and it breaks God's heart when ultimately we kind of get to the place like, yeah, but not with you, though. What is that? Where does that come from? Not with bands, but with us. Why do we get to the point to where being different gets to the point to where it's not just, I think different, I'm a little different, I've got different gifts, different ideas. How does it get from that to, I just can't even with you anymore? And differences become divisions. So that's what we're going to be looking at today. We're going to be looking at 3 different passages, one from the Gospels and a couple from 1 Corinthians. And what we're going to do is going to kind of look at just 3 different examples of where Jesus or Paul is having to deal with kind of a breakdown in relationships amongst people, where divisions are starting to happen. And I think it's important to kind of take it all the way back to the Gospels, because sometimes we think that the divisions that we have kind of started with us, like it's an American thing or it's a thing that's happened, since the Protestant Reformation and all the different denominations that have come down. But this has been going on. Paul was addressing it. And even Jesus had to deal with it. So where does this break down? How does it happen? So we're going to look at some examples and then look at what Jesus and Paul say about how to overcome it. So the first one is in Luke chapter 22, verse 24. And it says this: a dispute also arose among them as to which of them was considered to be greatest. Now there's another passage in the New Testament where this happens, but it's based out of like 2 of the apostles that were brothers, their mom, there's so much here. Like we may talk about this at men's retreat, where it's like mom comes in and says, Jesus, can my sons be the best ones? And that's broke. And it turns into this fight. This may be connected to that because this is in a different gospel, but I love the way that the context of this, there's no context. It's just 12 guys hanging around, and one of them kind of goes, you know what? I think I'm the best one. And then it just breaks down from there, right? You don't have to be too creative to imagine randomly a group of guys trying to decide which one of them is the best. Right? This is all the way back. This is in the presence of Jesus. All right? And on 1 Corinthians chapter 1, verse 11 through 12, we get this. My brothers and sisters, some from Chloe's household have informed me that there are quarrels among you. What I mean is this: one of you says, I follow Paul. Another, I follow Apollos. Another, I follow Cephas. Still another, I follow Christ. So again, we are 10, 20 years into the history of Christianity at this point, and we've already got breakdowns in this one town about which one of the apostles led them to faith, or which one of the apostles, their kind of little branch and kind of the way that they approach Christianity, which one of them is the better one. And already starting to divide themselves into these camps based on what evangelist or apostle you met and started the church in your area. Already. Again, this is not American Christian history. This is not post-Protestant Reformation. This is 20 years in. We're already starting to see these kinds of divisions. And then Paul kind of goes on, and in chapter 12, this is about where Paul's about to spend some time in a pretty famous passage where he uses the body extensively as a metaphor for how the church works, where it's like we take different people and put them together, like different parts of the body that work together. You need ears and eyes and nose and hands and feet. You need all this to work together. And all of this comes about because, again, they're having divisions with each other about which of them is the best, are the best ones. And he says this, verse 15, now if the foot should say, because I'm not a hand, I do not belong to the body, it would not for that reason stop being part of the body. The eye cannot say to the, verse 21 says this, the eye cannot say to the hand, I don't need you. And the head cannot say to the feet, I don't need you. So he's using two different examples here, again, with body parts, which of course makes it ridiculous. And I think that is the point. The ridiculousness of what it would be like if a body was this way, in Paul's mind, is like what it would be with us. If one of us were to say to the other one, because I don't feel comfortable teaching on a stage, I'm not a real Christian, because I don't have a great singing voice, because I don't like spending time with, I don't like teaching kids or whatever. I'm a secondary person. Or for somebody like me to say, because I stand here on the stage, you need me, I don't need you. And Paul's like, it would be ridiculous for any part of the body to talk this way. So you got that. You got people dividing themselves into camps based on which a disciple or apostle or evangelist they follow. And even all the way back in the time of Jesus, you've got this dispute that just kind of seems to burst out of nowhere, where we're arguing with one another about which of us we think is the best one. And so ultimately, I feel like in all of these situations, all of these for sure, and I would say in 95% of the conflicts that arise within a church or among churches comes down to this. Division happens when we think we're better or worse than somebody else. Now, we give most of the blame, and I agree, we give most of the lion's share of the blame in all of this, I think, to people who think that they're better than somebody else. But it can also happen if you somehow think, well, because I'm not this, I'm not good enough. I don't really belong. But this happens when we just start to compare. And I start to think, well, I look at you, and because I go to this sort of church that believes these things, and I have this historical background, that makes me better than you. Because I have this gift and you have that gift, that makes me better than you. Because I see things this way, because I vote this way, because I have more resources than you. Or some people's like, because I have less resources, because I'm not rich, that makes me better than you. Rich makes me better. No, not being rich makes me better. Being of this race, of this class, from this country. There are lots of ways that we define ourselves. And we begin to think that the way that we can define ourselves, whether it's by characteristics that we were born with, places where we just happened outside of our control to be born, based on things that I've accomplished, based on things that I have, based on the ways that I think, based on my values, whatever. I begin to think, because of all of these things, because of any number of these things, I am necessarily better than you. I am smarter than you. I am better than you. I am more moral than you. And because of that, it eventually gets to the point to where it would be better for us to be over here and you can be over there. But I believe it starts with this comparison game. So how do we get out of it? So we're going to go back to each one of these three things, and we're just going to kind of look at what Jesus' response was and what Paul's responses to both of these things were, and just kind of gather from that, I think, some really important things. If we're just going to kind of overcome this, we're going to overcome this idea of I'm better than you or I'm less than you, and we can break down these divisions and allow our differences not to divide us, but to make us stronger. What are some things that we need to learn? So in that story in Luke where it says that this conflict, this argument kind of broke out about who was better. This is Jesus' response in Luke chapter 22, verses 25 to 26. And Jesus said to them, "The kings of the Gentiles lord it over them, and those who exercise authority over them call themselves benefactors. But you are not to be like that. Instead, the greatest among you should be like the youngest, and the one who rules like the one who serves." Like, you guys have got the wrong idea about what makes somebody better. You think having power makes you better. You think being a benefactor, having things, having power, having resources, being the leader, being the one in charge, that makes you better. But let me tell you, that's the way people outside of the kingdom think. In fact, the kingdom is kind of turning itself upside down. And these people that actually have the most power and the most influence should actually act like they are the servant. And it makes you greater when you serve. So rather than thinking about how what you have makes you better, you need to take what you have and use it as an opportunity to serve. This is a very common theme when Jesus is talking about the kingdom of God, of kind of this inverting of the way that you think. You think that you're better. You think that you have more. Turn it around and become the greatest servant. So I'm going to say it this way. If we kind of want to get past this division that comes from when we think we're better than somebody, we need to have a mindset that says that we're going to serve. We're going to serve instead of compare. I'm going to serve you rather than compare myself to. I'm just going to have a life and a heart and a mindset that says that I'm just going to serve people rather than comparing myself to them. And very often kind of what happens is like, Jesus, like, we've got a mission out here. We've got a mission to do. God has called us to serve each other. He's called us to serve the world. He's called us to bring hope and life and light to the world. And you guys are sitting here finding out which one of you is the best at, and the more you do this, the less of this that we're doing. And this happens in churches all the time too, are we going to unite ourselves around the thing that God has called us to, or are we going to start nitpicking at each other? You think about multiple churches in a community. Are we going to be recognized we're all on the same team together reaching people who need Jesus? Or are we going to pick at each other over differences that we have in approach or in minor aspects of our belief system? And we're going to fight about this and lose sight of serving. But when you keep your heart and your mind on the big picture of what God has called us to, then minor differences either don't matter or can become strengths. And you see this very prominently in people that serve in missionary roles overseas. When you talk to people who live in places where there aren't 50 churches to choose from, there's just the one. And when there's just the one, you just love it. And you just go, and it is your place. And you're not thinking about, well, I like this over this, over this, over this, over this. Because we are so focused on the mission, it doesn't matter when we all come together to worship. Now, the longest I've ever served any place was, we spent a summer in Ukraine in 1995, my wife and I did. This is pretty soon after the fall of the Iron Curtain, and it got opened again where people could come on mission trips. And so we were there for a summer. And there was this church that the team that had been there for a year, there was a church that they were all going to. And so the summer team that my wife and I were leading, we went with them to this church. And there were a lot of reasons why it wasn't a great church for me to go to. One, the service was entirely in Russian. And I did not speak Russian. The guy spoke English. He was also a missionary. He spoke English, but the whole service was in Russian. Singing was in Russian, and the preaching was in Russian. And so, you're not getting a whole lot out of it necessarily, right? Because and this guy, he knew we were there, and he got up there, and he would say on Sunday, he was like, "Hey, I just want to say real quick to you English speakers out there, yeah, we do this whole thing in Russian, so you may not understand." Then he says, "Listen, but I've been doing this a long time, and I believe that if you really trust in God and put your faith in the Spirit, I've seen this happen where you'll be able to hear this sermon and you'll fully understand everything that I'm saying." And I don't know what you're like. So, well, okay, I can do this. I was locked in. I was just like, I'm going to do it, because if you're going to be spiritual people can hear I'm spiritual. I'm locked in, listening to everything that he says, again, in Russian. And I think it was and I've convinced myself one Sunday, like, yeah, I totally understood. This is what that sermon was about. I mean, I knew the passage, and I knew like 1 out of every 50 Russian words and context clues, maybe to put together a broad outline. But there was the things spiritual happened, just raw determination and optimism. But I didn't really understand what was being said. really kind of some differences of opinion with this guy as far as kind of some what would be considered over here, maybe even some major theological differences between the church I certainly was going to here and this church. But in that moment, it didn't matter. Just being in that place was refreshing. Singing hymns in Russian, even though I wasn't necessarily fully understanding what we were singing. Being around people who wanted to follow Jesus. Hearing someone teach the word, even though, again, I'm only catching maybe 3% of it. There was something joyful and refreshing about it. And the fact that there were language barriers, cultural barriers, and theological barriers didn't matter because there was a refreshment that came because we were all together connected on this idea of bringing hope to a very dark place post-Cold War. The differences mattered less the more the mission mattered. And God has called us to bring hope and life to our family, our friends, our community, and to the world. And the more attention we give to that, the less I become concerned about how different you are and about how different, quote, they are. And so Jesus is turning this whole thing upside down. Rather than trying to think about whether or not you're better or more right, be someone who serves. So we go back here to this idea. It's like, hey, I follow Paul, I follow Apollos, I follow Peter, and this is Paul's response to that in 1 Corinthians chapter 1, verse 13. Is Christ divided? Was Paul crucified for you? Were you baptized in the name of Paul? I mean, the sarcastic rhetorical questions here, I mean, just dripping, right? Oh, yeah, okay, so you go to the church, Peter's church. You go to Paul's church. So in your church, Peter died for you? Is that right? Oh, so you worship me in your church. Oh, no, it is the same Jesus, right. It's only one Jesus. And he's not divided. And he's the only one of all of these people that actually died for anyone's sins. I mean, maybe he was a little kinder than that in his rhetorical questions here. But it should feel like a dagger to them when they read it. You are aligning yourself more with someone who told you about Jesus rather than aligning with Jesus and being united with everyone who aligns with Jesus. And again, if there's anything that smells like the division that comes from different sorts of churches, this is it. We're the church that Peter started. We're the church that Paul started. We're the church that Apollos started. We got all these different things. And again, you would think this is a debate that is happening right now because there are churches out there that say, we as a church, we follow the teaching of John Calvin. And you're like, oh, okay. He was one of the main leaders of the Protestant Reformation. I don't know if you knew that. Well, actually, we go to a church and we follow the teachings of Martin Luther. And he's actually the main one from the Protestant Reformation, if you must know. And then the Catholics roll up and they're like, our church was started by Peter, bro. And they're like, and again, this is a very narrow piece. As soon as I make this joke, you're going to think I'm talking about a broad range of people. I'm not. There are not very many people that say this, but I have heard this before where the response to that is, well, you may think your church got started by Peter, but ours actually started with John the Baptist. Now, by and large, 99% of Baptists do not believe that, so do not think that I'm taking a wide shot there. But let's also say that John the Baptist started 0 churches. So let's just say that. The church started after Jesus. Technically, Jesus kind of launched it. Anyways. And so we've got this thing like and again, all of that you can trace the lineage of your church to these incredible historical figures is equal parts super cool. And okay. and ultimately don't matter in the sense that we're all on the same team. And then amongst all of that, the most noble of churches, the non-denominational church, has risen. We're all above that, and you can tell because I'm dropping Martin Luther and John Calvin jokes on you right now, right? No, it's just, why? Why do we do it? Do we meet in different rooms because it's logistically simpler? Do we meet in different rooms because by using different methods that have been built up over time, have allowed us to be effective in reaching a particular population and doing the mission this way, and another group over here is doing it this way? Are we doing different together? Are we doing different because they're wrong? They're bad. There's something wrong with them. There's an interesting thing that Paul says in a different part of 1 Corinthians. They're having this dispute, and it's in chapter 12. We haven't really addressed it here, but it's about, I guess it was in 11. Never mind. They're having this thing about when they would get together and do the Lord's Supper, it was actually kind of a meal that they would do together. And it said the people who had the most money would come first and just, even though they had already eaten, would come and just gorge themselves. And the poor people would not have anything left to eat. So they would come hungry and leave hungry. And the people who came full would come stuffed. And Paul's like, this is completely ridiculous. What is even wrong with you? But he drops this interesting little tidbit where he says, it's actually good when we disagree, because then we can figure out through that process, what does God really approve? And sometimes the answer is God approves of this, disapproves of this. And sometimes God's like, I actually approve of all of this. He says there is actually a really good things that can come from conflicts if we will let it. But that is not what we do. We use our disagreements and differences of philosophy and our different ideas and different approaches to divide us rather than unite us in different places at different times, using different ideas to together bring hope to the world that needs it. And if we can focus then on serving, we focus on the mission rather than the comparison. And then I can focus on the fact that there is just Jesus over all of us, and instead of these small factions. And ultimately here in chapter 12, verse 7 and 11, Paul says this, talking about the dispute about whether or not one particular part of the body is good or not. He says this, verse 7, now to each one, the manifestation of the Spirit is given for the common good. In verse 11, he says this, all these are the work of one and the same Spirit, and he distributes them to each one just as he determines. So in the same way, there's just this one Jesus that kind of is over all of us. The only one Jesus died. There's only one Holy Spirit too. And this Holy Spirit lives in all of us, and he determines what gifts you're going to have. He determines that. And so in the same way that we remember that Jesus and his death on the cross unites us, we need to remember this, that Jesus put us together on purpose. He did this. He made you you. He gave you the passions that he did, the personality that you have, the giftings that you have, the skills that you have. He did that. And he put you in a room with a different group of people who think a little bit differently, who have maybe a different set of skills and gifts and passions and values. And he put us all together in a room so that by together, and we see things a little bit differently. We have different strengths. We have different sorts of resources. We have different ways of influencing people. And when we can all come together on purpose, remembering what Jesus did, then together we're strong. And then you take our church, where you have a collection of a group of people that, even though we're different here within it, we're kind of united around a certain set of values and principles that determine the way that we do church. And right over there, There are some other people who have come together, and even though there's a lot of diversity there, they come together with, again, some shared values, and they're doing things. And then all over the community, there are all these groups of people. And then all over communities everywhere, there are all these groups of people with their own level of diversity, and then even more diversity amongst all of us who are together, even if we're not in the same room, even if we do not share all of the exact same values, even if we do not share all the exact same approaches to the way that you should be doing ministry or the way that we choose to do ministry, we are all together through our differences in very diverse ways with a lot of diverse people bringing hope and life to the world. And we have to make a decision, both within the church that we serve and as a part of the larger church of a community in the world. What are we going to say about the differences that we have? Are we going to look and say, well, because you're different in that way, I have to go over here. I can't with you. Or even if we choose to be over here and some other people over here, it's like, okay, we're doing this and you're doing something, but I don't approve of it. You're a them. And we're going to do it, and you're going to disappoint God over there. We have a decision to make. Rather than comparing ourselves to each other or comparing our church to some other church, we're going to focus on the mission that God has called us to. And then ultimately, recognize that there's just the one Jesus. And he died for all of us, and all of us are following him. And I'm going to stop thinking about what makes us different and spend more time about the thing that makes us the same, which is the mission and the Jesus. And then, when I understand that diversity of gifts and styles and approaches is part of the plan, it is part of the way that the body works, it is something that the Spirit does on purpose, then different becomes beautiful rather than becoming division. Let me pray. God, I'm so thankful for the people here in this room. God, those that I know well and those that I don't. Because, God, I know there's people who think a lot differently than me, have a lot of different gifts than me, different approaches in their friendship and their leadership and their encouragement. God, it just helps me in addition to just helping all of us. And, God, I'm just mindful of my friends who are sitting in different buildings this morning, some in the seats and some on the stage. And, God, I thank you for them. And I thank you that they just see what it is you've called us to just differently enough that with a different approach, together we can multiply the impact that you can have in our community. And God, I'm mindful of all the people all over the world in different countries that have been or will be in different places today. And God, I pray for their encouragement as well. And that, God, even though we are separated by buildings, by cultures, by miles, that, God, together as one, we would bring hope and life to a world that is desperate for it. And we're thankful for your Son who died for us and put us together in this body. And it's in his name we pray. Amen. Thanks again for joining us on our sermon podcast, and you can learn more about us at thegrovechurch.org. And if you go to thegrovechurch.org/connect, there's a form you could fill out. Just let us know that you've been listening. And if you want to dig deeper on some of these topics that we cover in our sermon podcast or just in other issues of dealing with culture or theology, those kinds of things, you can check out our Cultivate podcast, which is on the same feed, however you found this particular podcast. So again, this is Charlie, the lead pastor at The Grove, and thank you so much for joining us.